So thank you very much to everyone for making it here. I know the weather looked a little dicey. We were worried that they might cancel school. But I remember a lot of days growing up in Wisconsin where we had weather like this and they didn't cancel school because it was June. We were on summer vacation. But really, I'm very proud and a little overwhelmed to be here delivering my senior sermon. It's my senior sermon, so I feel like I should say words of summation, but I'm not really sure what to say when an experience as life-changing and time-consuming as this one comes to an end. At the end of Masechet Yoma in the Babylonian Talmud, there's a debate recounted about what the priests would say as they closed the gates at the end of Yom Kippur. Rav says that the priests would offer a saluta yaterta, an extra prayer, one last Amidah to worship the Lord. And Shmuel says that as the priests shut the gates, they would say, Ma anu umechayenu. What are we and what are our lives? Now, as I close the gates on my own rabbinical school career, I kind of find myself siding with both sages. Like Rav, I want to offer an extra prayer. Take one more class, maybe just one more year off. I meant to set up a meeting. Is that And like Shmuel's priests, I find myself at the end saying, who am I and what am I doing? What has been the point of rabbinical school and what will I be as a rabbi? Now, the Talmud doesn't solve this argument for us. They leave it open. And perhaps that's because this moment is so weighty. The priests have just finished purifying the nation on the holiest day of the year, in the holiest section of the temple. How are they supposed to walk home through the shuk after an experience like that? One imagines Rav's priests offering their extra prayer, trying to remain at the height of holiness for just a little bit longer, while Shmuel's priests crash from those heights and say, who am I? In the midst of an existential crisis. The Netivot Shalom asks a very similar question at this week's parshat. He says, how could Bnei Yisrael return to Olam Hazeh after the revelation? At Sinai, the seven heavens split open and each individual heard and saw the voice of God. How could they be expected to return to ordinary life after that? I get it. I've been receiving my own revelation here at JTS for a long time, and I'm not sure how I'm going to live in the real world in only a few months. I understand. I get it. I feel like as they offered these prayers, they were confused. They didn't know what to do or which way they could go. How can I leave this place where I have grown so much? And what will I do with the revelations that I have received? How to return to the mundane after something spectacular daunted Moshe and the leaders of Israel as well. At the end of this week's parsha, after they've given the laws, Moshe and the elders go back up the mountain to see God. They're attempting to recreate revelation, perhaps out of a desire to escape the real world, perhaps out of a desire to draw nearer to God. They even eat and drink on the mountain. Now, if eating and drinking with God sounds weird to you, that's because it is. And Rashi brings us a debate from our commentaries as to whether or not this eating and drinking should be seen positively or negatively. The Targum of Onkelos sees it positively. He says that this shows that they were Rav Raveh, the great ones of Israel, because they were able to reascend the mountain, see God, and even eat and drink there. While the sages of Psikta Rav Kahana denigrate this activity. And they say that Moshe and the elders were trying to see God with a lev gas, a gluttonous heart. Gas, for the rabbis, is the word they use to mean a full stomach. And perhaps this is an indication that Moshe should have been satiated with God, and yet he sought more. He was unwilling to leave the mountain and enter the human realm. Despite the fact that most of the later commentaries agree with Psikta Rav Kahana that this eating was problematic, I understand why they did it. It would be much nicer and so much more enjoyable to stay on the mountain, stay in the Beit Midrash and only worry about God. But that's not what God wants us to do. As soon as they're done eating, when the last glass of scotch has been drunk, God says to Moshe, come back and I will give you the tablets with the laws, asher katavti lahorotam, which I gave to you, I wrote them to teach them. This is a not so subtle redirection on the part of God. God is handing Moshe the tablets and saying, here, this is what I want you to be doing. Not sitting on the mountain reveling in my glory, but down at the foot of the mountain teaching my laws. Because divine union might not be the right goal. The goal might not be extended revelation, but rather incorporating revelation into our daily lives. Not devekut, but achrayut. Not sitting and eating in the presence of God, but inviting those without enough food to sit and to eat with us. We must leave the Beit Midrash. We must enter the world. And it seems like Rav's extra prayer is not ideal. Moshe and the elders were not meant to delay on the mountain at all. And if Rav's Salutia Terta is not what we should say at the end, that means we're meant to ask Shmuel's questions. Ma anu u'me chayinu. What are we and what are our lives? I imagine the priests asking themselves as they shut the gates and turning to one another and saying, what did we just do? How does killing some goats help anyone? Now, this might not be what the priests thought, but this is how I feel when I ask myself these questions. What am I? I have learned some great Torah, but how will it matter? I know I must leave the Beit Midrash, but the world that I'm returning to is broken and in peril. Am I bringing anything with me that will help? Because if I am not going to leave here with a way of meeting the needs of our people and our planet, then why was I here? Ma'anu u'me chayenu. 8 years ago, when I began JTS, there were problems in the world. And those problems have not gotten better, they've gotten worse. In those 8 years, I've only learned a small fraction of the vast treasury of knowledge, of ritual in our tradition. But through even that little bit, I can see how that knowledge, how those rituals can change the world. Because just as we are meant to leave the mountain, so too is our Torah. When we teach our laws, our rituals correctly, they can be powerful not in just our religious lives. They can powerfully address the problems that threaten our world today. To me, it seems irresponsible to teach our Torah as merely nice moments of theology, philosophy, or history, without also an eye towards acting to address these dangers that are at our gates today. So how do we live in the world after this revelation? I think that we can find an answer if we look at the nature of that revelation. At Sinai, God gave us Mishpatim, laws. The Torah and the rabbis speak in the language of law, and we are meant to operate in the world of law. The question is, as these laws come down the mountain and leave the divine realm for the human, how will we, at the foot of that mountain, teach these laws? In their essay, Ritual and Its Consequences, 4 professors show how our laws, our rituals, are subjunctive. They're meant to create an as-if world in which our values are realized. There should be no oppressed widows and orphans in our society at all. This law reminds us of our value, but it also reminds us of our power to achieve those values. I am the one who might harm the weak and the helpless, and I am the one who must refrain from doing so. When we teach our laws, they should be not as constraints, but as positive reminders of our ability to impact the world. They should remind us of our values and our ability to make those values a reality. That is the way that we bring our Torah down the mountain, and that is the way that I can look at myself in the mirror each morning. Which brings us back to our questions. Ma'anu u'me chayenu. Who are we and what are our lives? These questions are far too important to be answered. They're meant to be asked and asked often. The sages in their wisdom want us to ask them not just on Yom Kippur, but every day. And they've been in our Siddur since Amram Gaon, the earliest that we have, not at the end of the day, but at the beginning in Birkot HaShachar. So what power are these questions meant to remind us of? For me, it is the power to try and live a life that matters. These questions are a daily calibration, one which I often need. They are a call not to despair over our worthlessness, They are a call to live every day in a way that proves that our existence counts, that the world will be better for us having traveled through it. Who are we? What are our lives? Our task is to answer this question in the way that we live our lives each and every single day. Convinced of our power to better the world, committed to bringing revelation down the mountain, and called to a Torah that reminds us of our power and begs us to use it. Thank you.